Hello and welcome back to another episode of Come Back Stronger. I'm Dana Brooks of Fasig Brooks Law Offices, and we're here to bring you another story of someone who has overcome significant adversity and gone on to come back stronger and make their world and the people's lives around them a much better place. I'm so glad you're with me because I want to introduce somebody new to you from Fasig Brooks Law Offices. I've got my newest law partner with us today, Craig Richards. Craig, welcome.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Pleasure to be here.
Yes, now we threw him the deep end. So this is his first show, and he's on TV. He's ready to go. He comes to us from a wonderful legal background as an attorney. He did the defense, you know, the other side of what we do when we help people. That's not that he's a bad guy. It's just that he was working for people who have a different objective than we do at Fasig Brooks. And now he has switched sides. He's been working the plaintiff side for a while, and now he's with us representing people who've been injured through other people's carelessness. So welcome, welcome.
Thank you, thank you. I like to think of it as learning how the other side operates to be a little bit better as far as for advocating for the plaintiff side. So.
Yeah, so we got some good intel, got some good insight. But you know, this is what I think Craig maybe likes about our firm is that we're not all law all the time.
Absolutely.
And we've got a story today, y'all, that we've got Beth Jaffe. Now, funny enough, she's actually a personal friend of mine. She lives in Montana. She's from upstate New York, lives in Montana, but I met her through a women's group, and I travel with her a lot. Every year that we can do it, we go to Belize for these women's enrichment groups, and I've got to know her. Then I found out she wrote a book about the adoption experience. She was a birth mother, and she talks about that experience, and she talks about the experience of her son who was adopted, and then her life after that. So it's a different side of the adoption experience. It's one that you don't hear all the time. So I'm grateful to have you with us, Craig. I'm grateful to have you watching, and I can't wait till we come back to give you the first segment of this two-part interview of Beth Jaffe. Stay tuned.
You know what I love about reading client reviews and getting the letters from our clients is I love to see that our clients know that we walk our talk. To me, that's incredibly important.
I got a review from one of my clients. She says, I'm not just mashing stars on my phone. This law firm deserves all 5 stars and more. She couldn't walk. She was on a scooty chair because she had a fractured ankle. She couldn't work. She's a single mom. And she said, Kimmy, I need help and I need it now. And her case was not a clear liability case. It was a tough case. And I said, all right, I'm gonna do everything I possibly can for you.
Let's do this.
And within 3 months, we got it settled. I'd like to thank you from the bottom of my heart. If I could be in a commercial to tell my story, I would.
Oh, here she is. She's in it now. And we are back. This is our first part of our two-part interview with our producer, Greg Bird, and our guest, Beth Jaffe.
Beth, thank you so much for being with us today. You're an author, you're an artist, you're an activist. I mean, you've done so many important things, but I want to talk to you a little bit about your book, Life Choices, and how that came to be. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me today. And thanks for the whole team Come Back Stronger. I'm pretty excited about this opportunity. I went to college back east. I'm living in Montana these days, and I was raised in upstate New York. And, you know, I had dyslexia, and that was a really major impact on my schooling experience. And there was a lot of pressure to perform and to be a high functioning individual. And it's tough when everybody's reading really easily and you're not, you know, and that was a big piece of what kind of drove me to the life that I ended up living, which was very unusual in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I imagine, you know, back in that time, I'm right there with you, that dyslexia was not commonly diagnosed, or even when it was, they just said, well, you got dyslexia. They don't have the programs in place to help you as they do now.
Yeah, I wasn't diagnosed until after most of my college experience. So it was just like, well, I don't know why I can't read, but I got to do good in school. So I'm going to listen. I did well because I listened, and I'm an auditory learner, so also very experiential. So I like to be in the middle of something to figure it out. And I really didn't think I could read or write well, and so it wasn't like a career path choice for me at all. And I made some very questionable choices in between high school and college. And yeah, it was super impactful for me, a lot of fun. I had a great time. And when I got to college, I fell in love. And um, what happened from there is why I wrote the book. I had a lot of hard times and struggles that led to an unplanned pregnancy. And that led to an adoption experience. And so I'm a birth mother, and that's a very unusual thing to be as well. Um, Not a lot of people who are birth mothers come out and speak about their experience in any kind of entertaining and coherent way, because it's a really tough experience. I think being dyslexic was a lot easier.
Yeah, and I think that's, a lot of your experience and your advocacy came out of the fact that you're very candid and very open about being a birth mother. And you're right, we hear a lot of talk about the side of the adoptive child or the adoptive parents. But, not a whole lot of people understand what it's like to be a young woman in your position and giving up a child for adoption. Do you feel like talking a little bit about that process and why you made that decision?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the college I ended up going to was in the Ivy League, so it was pretty exciting to be at this high level of academia. And everybody there was pushing hard for abortion for me.
Mhm.
And it just didn't feel right at all. I had dreams, I've had things like metaphorical dreams to, save the world, because I had heard about global warming in high school.
Yeah.
And I love to hike in nature. But I also had very real dreams about kind of future sort of experiences. And so when it came to be my choice moment, I chose life. And people were not kind. It was not a good situation. People were very judgmental
Mm.
and not helpful, like the opposite of help. And that could lead to a whole, I've written a book about it
Yeah.
because it was terrible. And what I've done to deal with that over the years has had various consequences. Choosing adoption in the end was because ultimately I didn't have any support. Nobody was helping me, and I didn't have money, and I didn't feel like I could raise my son well.
It's fascinating to hear you say, you didn't get any support and you got a lot of judgmental against you at the time, because today, it's a lot of that is geared towards women who go in for abortions. But here you're making a choice. You choose life. You want to give birth to your son, but you just know you can't provide for him at that time. And you're thinking you're doing something for the best for him. But here you're still getting judged and getting attacked for that. And that had to be awfully traumatic for you.
Well, yeah. And what was really traumatic was many years later finding out just how traumatic adoption is on the children. People who are adopted have a much higher rate of suicide completion than the average population, up to four times as likely to complete suicide. And adopted individuals are more likely to have all kinds of mental health issues and drug addiction, alcoholism, failure to thrive type symptoms. And birth mothers have this as well. So it was really upsetting to discover just how much they knew about these negative consequences and didn't tell me.
So at the time, I mean, even today, people don't talk about the experience that the birth mother goes through. And it has to be traumatic. It has to just rip your heart out. You're making a decision that you think is for the best for both yourself and the child, but there's just no support. And that's one thing I do want to get into. We're gonna take a little break, step aside for a moment, but you have kind of made a career out of being an advocate for the side, and that is really a wonderful thing. You're championing for the rights of the children and the mothers. So we'll be right back after this break.
Wow. Now, you could imagine as a woman, I've got some thoughts on this.
Absolutely.
I feel a certain kind of way about it. Some of them are this, and I wrote a book about feminism, and I called it Functional Feminism for a reason. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of hearing where people are not supported, women are not supported in the choices that they make. It seems like this decision, this very intimate, important decision, has been so politicized, and there's so much support for you to make the decision. Make the one I want you to make the one I want you to make. But nobody seems to be doing any kind of follow-up with you. First of all, tracking the consequences of these experiences.
Absolutely.
They all take it and spin it to get you to make the decision they want you to. But are they really looking out for you? And are they really following, the children? Are they really doing anything to support people who make the decisions that they make, whether it is to continue the pregnancy, to not, whatever it is? But I'm fed up with it from a feminist perspective, especially. But I'm really upset about the politicization of it. What are your thoughts?
I feel like she's actually in an impossible situation.
Yeah.
Right? She's tasked with this aspect of society telling her not to have abortion, which we know is a hot topic right now. And then obviously when she chooses this option of going full term and then
Where
actually
is it,
adopting, absolutely no help. It's insane. So I would agree. And I've obviously never thought of that perspective until hearing her story, but it's absolutely true. How is she supposed to make a decision when both seem like the wrong option from a societal standpoint?
Where are her people? Once they get the decision made on their side, boom, it's a score for me. And then good luck to you, sis. That's just not right. That's
agree.
not right. So I like that she's pulling the cover back on this. I'm very fortunate. I've got a lot of friends who were adopted, but let me tell you, I do see certain things among my friends.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something going on with you where you're going, why did my parents choose not to raise you? And you got to answer that, and you got to answer the right way. You got to feel good about that answer. That kid's going to be, chugging that luggage for a long, long time. So I can't wait to get back and find out what she's doing to advocate for people in this situation. So y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
So I think one of the important roles that a female lawyer has is understanding the family dynamic. The more you understand what people do for their families, the more money you can get people when they're injured and they can't service their families by everything that they're doing at home and at work. Right. And I don't want to say that men don't understand that family dynamic, but I do think that statistics show that women understand that family dynamic more and can empathize and sympathize with it because of our own roles in our own homes.
Right, and it helps offset some of these assumptions about women's claims, which is that they're inherently valued lower. It's easier to replace the things that they do. They're more menial. They're not higher earning career professionals. When you look at everything they do and what the negligence of the wrongdoer has caused them and this whole entire family, that adds up pretty fast. And you've got to have somebody who is looking out for you and knows to go after every single thing you are owed. And we are back with our producer, Greg Bird's second segment of his interview with adoption and birth mother advocate Beth Jaffe. Take a look.
And Beth, we're back. And when we left, we were talking about the experiences the birth mothers had after giving up a child for adoption. But you have become a major advocate, and you have changed the laws in Montana where you live. And I imagine this movement is going on. Can you talk a little bit about your activism and what you've done?
Sure. Well, basically, people who are adopted are not guaranteed the ability to know who they are, where they came from. And that's where I came in. I changed that piece of the law in Montana. And also, their birth records are sealed. And I helped unseal them, basically. Laws are pretty messy, and it can be hard to get it right.
But before your legislation got passed, I mean, an adoptive child, really had no access to that information without court orders. But like for medical reasons, sometimes even job applications or with the government, without having that birth certificate, they may be denied that, which has got to be awful hard for them to go through that process.
Yeah, well, they have these amended birth certificates through adoption, but what they don't have is the ability to check any of the boxes in the healthcare offices. So people who are adopted don't know what their family history is. And so the insurance companies don't pay for expensive, procedures that are important, like for cancer screenings and other health things like that. So it was really important. And we could talk forever about the complexities of all that. One thing I was super excited to do was help birth mothers change their paperwork. So birth mothers aren't always informed about what they're signing away. And in fact, sometimes it's very obfuscated intentionally, and so they don't know that maybe they signed a form that seals the records permanently. And my law says that birth mothers can write into the state of Montana if they relinquished here, that they would like their the records open for their child.
And you have since made contact, I would guess is the way to say it, with your first child. You have 3 other children now. You're happily married, and 3 other children. But your first son, you have had contact with him, and you've reached out to him, haven't you?
Yeah, it was quite a thing. I did get to meet him, and not everybody realizes just how complicated and challenging that is, and the relationships aren't perfect. And over time, it's just been a ebb and flow. And I found that during the pandemic, it was particularly traumatic to not be in close contact with him, not know how is he alive? I don't even get to know that, and to experience that over and over throughout his life, it's been so hard.
Yeah.
And so I've really dug into art as a form of coping. And I made a flower wand, and I make wishes come true with my flower wand, helping myself have permission to just go ahead and change the law. Just because it's only me and nobody else. It was like a committee of me and myself and I, and we had fun meetings with our flower wands.
Well, I think that's important, that wand, the concept of giving yourself permission, because I know a lot of times that there's a lot of anxiety and guilt built up, but if you have that tool, that outlet, your magic wand to give yourself permission, that is just it helps you on a pathway to healing. And just to give yourself permission to do something, sometimes that's all it takes, is that little nudge.
Yeah, sometimes we're the Cinderella, and sometimes we also need to be our own fairy godmother. And so that's what I chose to do. My art and my humor are my primary healing tools of choice, and I do pretty well. Helping other folks is also, I've been coaching and teaching art for people, creativity. I talk about it in terms of creativity lessons and coaching, and I help people learn to access their creative genius in their brains for interesting new problem solving, because all of us face really hard times and hard problems, and sometimes what we need are more creative answers and more creative solutions.
A little outside of the box thinking.
That's my thing. Yeah.
Now, I know you've wrote a book, a little memoir called Life Choices, and I really loved the excerpt that I've read from that. And you kind of wrote this as a series of letters to your first child. Now, was that just a coping mechanism for yourself to help process it yourself, or did you really intend for your son to read these eventually?
Well, that was part of our reunion journey. I was actually writing letters to him on the internet and putting them on like a password protected website I made, because I helped my husband develop a software company. So I have access to technical support like that, and I knew some of the coding myself. And so I did do that. And I found it was really helpful to write those kind of letters. And I never really had the satisfying time and journey of completing everything that I meant to say. I was always just raising babies and working all the time. And actually the pandemic was really helpful for me to just be like, okay, we're going to take a step back, especially because I had COVID and I had a near-death experience, and I woke up from that and just was like, whoa, I really need to write this book. And while I was writing it, the Dobbs case came to light and my father died of COVID. And it's been a long, difficult journey of tears that I've had to wade through. And sometimes the only way I actually feel successful at it is thinking of helping future generations and helping my son and other birth mothers like me and other people who were adopted who don't get to know what their birth mothers were thinking, because the shame is really crippling and it's devastating. And I'm privileged as who I am. I'm privileged, and I've really been given a lot of resources. So I feel I have a lot to give back because I'm so thankful for all I've received.
Well, it certainly does sound that, and you are doing amazing work over there. And like I said, I really love the concept of your magic wand, giving yourself permission. Where can people learn more about you, see some of your artwork, and maybe purchase it if they care? Do you have a website?
Yeah, I'm at bethjaffe.com.
And that's Jaffe?
Jaf like Fred, F like Flintstone, E like Edward.
And there's that humor you talked about.
Yeah.
Beth, I want to thank you so much for being with us today, and thank you for all the work you're doing. It's making a difference in a lot of people's lives, and I think sharing your story will help more people find the resources they need to help. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for this great show. I appreciate it.
Oh, I love her so much.
Absolutely.
Lots of things that I'm thinking about here. I can understand the need for sealed records and closed adoptions, especially at the onset, because not every placement is a joyous one. Sometimes parental rights have to be terminated, and sometimes that's fought. Absolutely. And sometimes, that new family needs the opportunity to, grow free of interference and that sort of thing. But over time, after a while, you could see a child's curiosity once they learn things. And of course, along that way, we're dealing with health things all the time.
Absolutely.
So it's really good information to have. And I think there has to be something, but there has to be something that's not a binary policy of 100% sealed forever. Good luck to you. I hope you're rich enough to hire an investigator, versus maybe after a time start releasing some of the information. What do you think legally from a perspective?
Well, one, I think it's the perfect scenario based on the legislation she talked about, because now you're allowing people, first the parents get to opt into it, is how she phrased it, which is huge, because there is that desire over time to hopefully, be able to be back in touch, or at least know whoever you originally put up for adoption. But beyond that, you're right, the health risks, right? Having somebody who is adopted with the traumas that come with that, being able to at least find out their medical history, right? Or their birth parents to that tune from ethnicity purposes, because certain ethnicities, African American by example, with heart issues, right? These are things that are extremely important, and it limits that trauma that happens in the first stage. So, I mean, this is a wonderful piece of legislation, and what she's doing is just amazing.
I think so too, because she's doing something that's not really comfortable. A lot of people just don't do these follow-up stories about, well, what if I do get my records unsealed, and what if I find out that the person who were my genetic parents, they weren't great, wonderful people, and maybe somebody's in jail, maybe somebody's just terrible, and I was better off not knowing it. So there's just no easy answer, and that's why, I think legislation in a situation like that needs to maybe err on the on the side of being, more open and access, instead of keeping it away from you and being more paternalistic. But it's not an easy decision. So, but we'll talk more about it when we wrap up this interview with Beth Jaffe right after this.
This is about Carrie. It says, "There's not enough space, nor could I find enough words to articulate my experience with Fasig Brooks. Working closely with Carrie and Brittany has literally changed my life. Not only did they handle my case as if they were standing up for their own immediate family, we became like family. I've never felt alone in the process. I never felt like just another case, and the encouragement on the harder days would always lift me up. Absolutely everyone in the firm exudes a compassion for the cases they handle and a real passion to empower the lives of individuals and families far beyond a settlement. They are strong, resilient, will leave no rock unturned. I absolutely love Fasig Brooks.
I love that. I mean, I just have no words to explain how grateful I am that somebody feels like that about us.
Hello, welcome back. We're talking about the interview our producer Greg Bird did with Beth Jaffe. She is an author and a birth mother and adoptive children's advocate. And she talks about a lot of things in her book. She found herself, pregnant in college. The decision for her that felt right with her was to have her child, but she didn't feel like she could give her son the life that he deserved, and so she did relinquish her rights, and that child was placed and adopted. And then she talks about the fallout from that and how she felt and how she later reconnected with her child and how he felt. And it's not all a big rosy, fantastic picture, but the reason why she felt compelled to write the book and why it was such a hard decision for her, she said, was because when she made this decision to not have the abortion, because she was a very gifted person. She was in an Ivy League college. She had a bright future, and a lot of people thought that was going to hamstring her for life and she would never reach her potential. So when she decided to follow her heart and have this child, she wasn't very supported, and I just can't stand that. Craig, I'm hearing this with a lot of younger people. There's just a trend I'm seeing. I see it on social media. They're shaming women for having children, whether they keep them or they relinquish custody to a better environment. But they're shaming women for doing these traditional things. But I don't know how I feel about that. I want women to feel supported in everything they do.
Well, first and foremost, I definitely agree with you that they are shaming women. But here's the thing. She describes this story about wanting to live life, right? Wanting to actually pursue her dreams and not having that. And she should have that right? That's something that should exist, that she should be able to do. However, it's an impossible situation, right? But based on what she's done and really the legislation she's pushing and her ability to now at least give choices and options to come back and not lose your life, but at the same time have an adoption opposed to actually an abortion.
Right.
I mean, that's huge. That's what we should be thriving for as a society.
Yeah, to make that look like the great choice
Absolutely.
It can be, but with your eyes wide open. But I like this discussion because we're building empathy. We all assume there's happy endings on every decision that we want people to make, but there's consequences and there's fallouts. But there's also a lot of great and good in the world, and Beth Jaffe's an example of that. So we appreciate you watching us again this week, and we'll see you next time on Come Back Stronger.
Excellent service. 100 times more responsive than other attorneys I've worked with. Highly recommend, especially attorney Kimmy Hogan. She is fabulous.
Yes, she is.
It's all about communication. The #1 complaint about lawyers is my lawyer never calls me back. But the #2 complaint is my lawyer never calls me and tells me what's happening with my case. That's why I love reading a review like this, because I know, Kimmy, you are really good about calling your clients, letting them know what's happening with the case, keeping them informed every step of the way. Because what you got to remember is that these clients, this is their first case a lot of times. They've never been through this before. They don't know what to expect. Am I doing the right thing? Am I getting the right medical treatment?